The sun slipped through the kitchen blinds in soft stripes, painting light across Marjorie's marble countertops. The house was still, too still, just the hum of the fridge and the slow drip of her coffee machine. She reached for her favorite ceramic mug, the one with a small crack near the handle. She never replaced it. It felt honest, like something that had survived. Her husband Lyall had already left. All that remained of him was the faint scent of aftershave and a banana peel sitting half-eaten on the counter. She sat down, opened her phone out of habit, and started scrolling emails, newsletters, calendar reminders. Then she saw it. A boomerang video from her niece, champagne glasses clinking mid-air, a flash of white yacht railing in the background, sunglasses, sun hats. The caption, "Family tradition loading." Marjorie didn't blink. But her thumb stopped scrolling. Just like that, the silence changed. She opened the group chat Lyall had once added her to, Preston Legacy Voyagers. The name sounded like a luxury travel agency or a dynasty, but it wasn't there anymore. No messages, no alerts, not even a passive FYI or a courtesy CC. Just gone. She searched her inbox. Nothing. Not one email about logistics, no invite, no mistake to cling to. Everyone else was there. She knew the faces, Flora's tight-lipped smile, Tom's awkward Hawaiian shirt, her mother-in-law holding a mimosa with polished fingers. All gathered, all included, all without her. And yet, the yacht was hers. She paid for it, built the business that paid for it, named it. But in this family, she was still invisible. And suddenly, it wasn't just about being left out. It was about being erased. The ping came mid-afternoon. Marjorie had just finished rinsing out a glass when her phone buzzed. The sender, Valora. She hesitated. Valora rarely texted her directly. When she did, it was usually performative birthday wishes with too many emojis or vague group invites sent too late to actually attend. But this wasn't for her. It was a screenshot, a list of the yacht's cabin assignments. Under portside guest rooms, Marjorie's name was there, then crossed out. Right below it, Belle, Valora's yoga instructor. The same Belle who once looked her up and down at a family brunch and asked, "Are you Lyall's assistant or something else?" Before she could even process it, another notification dropped in. A voice note. Valora's voice, casual, laughing like a high schooler on speakerphone. "Well, at least the energy on board won't be so tight this year." Tight. The word hit like cold metal. Marjorie didn't respond. She didn't scream. She didn't even blink. She just set the phone down on the counter and stared at the still wet glass in the sink. Her hands were steady, but her jaw clenched so tight it would ache for hours. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. The clink of fork against china, the distant tick of the wall clock, the soft hum of Lyall's phone as it refreshed the stock market app again and again. Marjorie picked at her salmon, pushing around a roasted carrot, then looked up with a half smile. "Did you know your family's planning another yacht trip?" She asked, voice light, casual, almost bored. Lyall didn't look up. Oh, yeah, Mom mentioned it last week, I think. They're still finalizing the list." She tilted her head just slightly, still calm. "Am I on the list?" This time he paused, blinked, finally looked at her. "Of course, why wouldn't you be?" She nodded, just a little, enough to let it settle in the air. Then he went back to his phone. "I'll double check," he added, but he wouldn't. He never did. And that was louder than anything he could have said. It came at 10:42 a.m., not a dramatic subject line, not flagged as urgent, just another unread notification in the sea of her inbox. Subject, yacht cabin cancellation confirmation. Marjorie blinked, opened it. At first, it seemed like a generic notice. Then she saw it. Cancellation request submitted by Valora Preston. Date of request 3 days ago. Status confirmed. Cabin released. Her stomach didn't drop. Her hands didn't shake. What she felt wasn't panic. It was clarity. So this wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. She reread the email twice, then clicked forward, typed in her own address, and hit send, just in case. Then she printed it, crisp and clean, one copy. She slid it into a manila folder she'd long ago labeled Taxes and Property. But today it would get a new label, Truth. She didn't cry, she didn't text Valora, didn't throw the coffee mug, didn't storm into Lyall's office asking for answers. Instead, she opened the Notes app on her phone, created a new entry. Title, Things She's Done That I Let Slide. And the list just flowed. Forgot to include me in Rachel's bridal shower chain. Sent Christmas itinerary without my name, twice. Tagged the wrong Marjorie in family posts and never fixed it. Brunches that accidentally didn't reach me. Called me supportive at brunch when I was the one who paid for the yacht. Each memory landed like a paper cut, small but sharp. Wounds she told herself to ignore, until now. She kept typing, not out of rage, not even sadness, but because she needed to stop rewriting history to protect everyone else's comfort. By the time she paused, her jaw ached, not from stress, but from holding in years of silence. And she finally understood. This wasn't about one trip. It wasn't even about the yacht. It was about a pattern, a slow erasure dressed in politeness. And she'd helped them do it. Not anymore. Before the yacht, before the brunches, before anyone ever toasted to family legacy, there was just Marjorie. No partners, no trust funds, no one backing her with a last name that opened doors. Just a beat-up Honda Civic, a busted coffee machine in a shared office suite, and a dream that refused to die, even when she almost did. She used to steam her thrift store blazers in gas station bathrooms before investor meetings. Tuck her heels into a backpack after a full shift at her day job. Sleep under her desk when deadlines swallowed the clock. Her first loan got denied, her second too. One investor told her, "You've got a nice smile, but we're going with someone more aggressive." They meant a man, they just didn't say it. So she stopped smiling in meetings and started building anyway. 2 a.m. delivery runs, customer complaints she answered personally. Marketing copy written in drive-thrus with grease on her fingers. There was no applause, no audience, no one cheering her on, just grit and hunger and the quiet voice in her head that said, "Build it anyway." When the company finally turned a real profit, not just breaking even, but actually thriving, Marjorie didn't celebrate with diamonds, no designer handbags, no champagne trips to Paris. She bought a boat, not for show, not to impress anyone, but because that yacht represented something no one had ever handed her: freedom, a reward for every late night, every rejection, every "you're not what we're looking for." She named it herself, signed the check alone, felt her hand steady as she sealed the deal. No shaky pen, no second guessing, just peace. But then came the paperwork and the accountant's voice. For tax purposes, it's cleaner if you list both your names. You know, marital assets, trust planning, legacy protection. She hesitated, briefly, then signed anyway. Marjorie Wells and Lyall Preston. And just like that, her victory became shared property. And eventually, their family's legacy. The brunch was perfectly staged. Ivory tablecloths, fresh peonies in mason jars, tiny name cards printed in gold foil. Marjorie sat at the far end of the table, half listening, half surviving. And then Valora stood up. Holding a mimosa, smile camera ready. "It's just so meaningful," she said, raising her glass, "to have traditions tied to something we own as a family. It really makes our legacy feel tangible." People nodded, phones lifted for Instagram stories. Valora turned slightly toward Marjorie. And how wonderful that Marjorie supports it. Supports it, as if she were a donor, not the damn reason it exists. Marjorie smiled. Barely. Just enough to keep the room from freezing. Just enough to stay polite. But inside, something shifted. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't bitterness. It was the slow, quiet ache of being erased in plain sight. And the rage? It didn't explode. It settled, deep, controlled, waiting. Marjorie didn't scream. She didn't send a furious group text. She didn't demand an apology. What she did was quieter, smarter, more permanent. She opened her laptop, placed it on the dining room table, and began gathering, one by one. The original yacht purchase agreement. Her name first, Lyall's second, only there because of tax efficiency. Email receipts of every wire transfer, 5 in total, from her business account. Screenshots of the family group chat, the one where she was removed. The cancellation email, submitted by Valora, dated, signed, confirmed. The voice memo, Valora's laughter, her actual words. At least the energy on board won't be so tight this year. Marjorie labeled a new folder on her desktop. Truth, final. Then she printed everything, one document at a time, each sheet sliding into a clear plastic sleeve. No creases, no rush. By the time she zipped the manila folder shut, it didn't just hold paper, it held proof, it held power, and she wasn't going to raise her voice to be heard, she was going to show them why they should have listened in the first place. Marjorie didn't pack a swimsuit, not a single beach dress. No straw hat, no wedges, no perfume labeled summer. She didn't pack for vacation. She packed for clarity, the kind that doesn't come with sunblock and sandals, but with signed contracts and printed screenshots. She opened her suitcase and laid each page carefully like silk. Yacht purchase agreement, bank wires, canceled guest list, legal email headers, the transcript of Valora's voice message. Then came her outfit. Not glamorous, not flashy. Just one navy blue dress. Structured, sharp, clean, and a coat the color of steel. No jewelry, no accessories screaming for attention. Just poise and purpose. She zipped the suitcase shut with a finality that sounded like resolve. She wasn't going to join the trip. She was going to reclaim it. She didn't walk fast. She didn't walk slow. She walked like someone who had nothing to prove because she didn't. The marina gleamed under late morning sun. Her heels clicked against the dock. Precise, calm, measured. She spotted them near the boarding gate. Valora, in cream linen, mid-conversation with someone Marjorie vaguely recognized from a cousin's second wedding. Valora turned, saw her. For a breathless half-second, her face froze. Smile caught. Hand mid-air. Eyes narrowing. She didn't wave. Didn't speak. Just stiffened, like the lie in her lungs had suddenly gotten heavier. Marjorie didn't flinch. Didn't even glance at Lyall standing just behind the group, hands in pockets, eyes down. She walked past them. No eye contact, no smile. Just one small nod. And then a crew member stepped forward. Tall, professional, wearing the navy blazer of the yacht's charter staff. He bowed slightly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Welcome aboard, Miss Marjorie. The owner is now aboard." No drama, just truth. And it cracked the dock wide open. Valora blinked hard. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Lyall finally looked up. But Marjorie, she simply stepped onto the yacht. Not as a guest, not as a wife, but as the woman they tried to erase, who now owned the entire narrative. Dinner was lit like a photo shoot. Soft candlelight, imported linens, a string quartet playing something vaguely French. Valora stood, wine glass in hand, phone propped up perfectly, ring light clipped to the centerpiece. She hit go live. "I just want to take a moment," she began, voice syrupy sweet, "to celebrate what this family stands for. Legacy, loyalty, love." Her followers sent hearts, dozens, then hundreds. She smiled wider, gesturing around the table. "You know, traditions like this don't just happen. They're built, protected, passed down." She placed her hand dramatically over her heart, "And I'm just so honored to help carry that torch." A long pause. Cameras clicked. Someone dabbed a tear. But across the table, Marjorie didn't blink. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say a word. Because she didn't have to. The staff had already greeted her as the owner. The folders still sat quietly in her clutch. And Valora, she might have the mic, but Marjorie had the truth. And it was only a matter of time. The table was glowing with wine candlelight and fake sentiment. Valora was mid-sentence, gushing about family values, when Marjorie calmly reached into her clutch. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't stand. She simply slid a folder onto the center of the table. The sound, just paper on wood, was louder than Valora's entire speech. Every eye turned. Marjorie flipped the cover open. One page, then another. She didn't pass them around. She just let them sit. Highlighted in yellow, co-ownership listed for tax purposes only. Sole investor, Marjorie Kane. Valora froze. Someone gasped. A fork dropped. And then Marjorie spoke only once. This wasn't forgotten. It was erased. She pulled out one final paper, a printed message from Valora. She's not blood. She shouldn't own a family asset. The silence felt heavy, but Marjorie wasn't done. She gently pointed to the wiring receipts, all 5 transfers from her business account. No one needed her to yell. The receipts were yelling for her. The live stream was still on. Hearts had stopped. Comments were flooding in.
Wait, she owns the yacht? This is real-time justice, OMG! Valora opened her mouth, but nothing came out, because the truth had finally spoken, and it had Marjorie's signature on every page. There was no yelling, no chaos, no wine glasses flung across the table, just a stillness that vibrated, like a chandelier before it falls, like a crack in the ice just before it splits. Valora stood frozen, fingers clenched around her untouched wine glass.
Marjorie leaned back, calm, composed, unbothered. And then a cousin coughed. Another shifted awkwardly in their seat. Someone at the far end whispered, "I think we've all been lied to." It didn't take a crowd. It only took one voice of truth to tilt the room. No one defended Valora, not her sister, not Lyall. Even the staff stayed still, eyes low, but listening. The live stream chat had turned brutal. She lied on camera. Where's the apology? The owner was erased. Not cool. And in the middle of it all, Marjorie didn't gloat. She didn't clap back. She didn't need to. Because nothing is louder than a room full of people suddenly realizing they chose the wrong side. And now they were sitting in silence at the table she built. Nobody screams. Nobody storms off. But something shifts. The next morning at breakfast, Valora sits alone at the far end of the deck. Her linen suit is still crisp. Her phone still glows with unread DMs. But no one's tagging her now. People trickle in, quiet, awkward. They nod politely, but the warmth is gone. A cousin who used to adore her now says good morning without eye contact. Her sister suddenly has a call to take every time she gets near. Even Lyall has become a ghost in his own marriage, silent, small, sipping his coffee like it's a shield. Nobody calls her out. Nobody needs to. They just pull away, like watching a ship slowly loosen from the dock. And Valora, she feels it. She watches them float farther and farther, until she's sitting there, surrounded by sunlight, silverware, and silence. Not punished, just left behind. They sit by the water. No wine, no audience, just wind and truth. Lyall doesn't look up when he says it. I knew about Valora, the cancellation, all of it. He fidgets with his wedding ring like it's suddenly too tight. I didn't want to rock the boat. It's always easier when you let things go. Marjorie doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She lets the silence press against him like a tide that doesn't recede. You didn't let things go, Lyall, she finally says. You let me go. He opens his mouth, closes it. There's nothing left to say. No big apology, no grand gesture. Because Marjorie doesn't need closure. She already owns her truth. And now, she's starting to own her freedom too. 1 week later, a sun-drenched rooftop, fresh peonies and vases, no yacht, no live stream, just real people. Marjorie hosts a brunch, but not everyone gets the invite. Not the ones who smiled only when cameras flashed, not the ones who sat silent while she was erased, only those who saw her. Who chose her spirit over blood. She laughs, really laughs, over iced coffee and citrus scones. No tension, no pretending. Just a new kind of family, not built on legacy, but on loyalty. She doesn't talk about the yacht. She doesn't need to, because now she's not proving a point. She's living her proof. And the table, it's not long, not fancy, but it's hers. Every chair earned, every guest cherished. And this time, no one had to fake a toast. She wasn't looking for it, just organizing old files in a carved wooden box her father left behind, tucked between tax returns and postcards. An envelope, yellowed at the edges, her name on the front written in her father's steady hand. She pauses, opens it. Inside, one folded piece of paper. No fluff, no backstory, just one line handwritten in blue ink. Don't fight for a seat. Build your own table. She reads it again, and suddenly, everything aligns. The yacht, the brunch, the silence she kept, the power she reclaimed. She smiles this time not for survival, but for remembrance. Her father had always seen her, even when no one else did. And now, she's not just building a table, she's building something far bigger, a life where she decides who gets a seat. Her phone buzzes, unknown number. She almost doesn't answer, but something nudges her thumb to swipe. Hi, Aunt Marjorie, it's Maya, Valora's niece. Barely 22, the one who used to giggle in the corner during family brunches and post selfies beside Valora's beach bags. I saw everything, the brunch, the documents, the silence. You're the only one in this family who built something from nothing. Pause. Would you mentor me? Marjorie doesn't speak right away. She just breathes in, softly, because this isn't about revenge or validation. It's about planting something new. Yes, she says gently. But we're not building yachts or legacies. We're building backbone. Maya laughs, a little nervous, a little hopeful. Marjorie smiles. Not for them, for the future. The dock is quiet now. Marjorie stands at the edge of the yacht, barefoot, wind teasing the hem of her linen shirt. The sun is low, the sky an ocean of gold. No audience, no performance, just her. She steps inside, no longer as a guest, but as the one who always belonged. The documents are filed. The brunch is done. The calls have been answered. And now, there's only peace. She looks at the polished table, the one that once seated Betrayal. Now it holds fresh coffee, a notepad, and an empty chair beside her. She whispers, not to anyone, but to herself, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is to stop asking and start owning. She closes her notebook. The screen fades to black, but her power, it lingers. Sometimes the most powerful victories are the quiet ones. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need revenge to win. And you don't need permission to take up space in a world you helped build. Respect isn't claimed by blood or tradition. It's earned by integrity, resilience, and the courage to walk away when silence becomes betrayal. So, if life ever pushes you out of a room you helped build, don't beg for the door to open. Build your own room. And make sure the chairs at that table are earned, never inherited. If this story moved you, if you've ever been overlooked, silenced, or told you don't belong, hit that subscribe button. Not just for stories, but for strength, for women who rise with dignity, for voices that don't need to shout to be powerful. Welcome to the table. We saved you a seat. Subscribe now, because your story matters.